Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd, fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. My respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this segment, we will talk about the moon sighting or calculation from the perspective of Islamic texts, especially from the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is nothing in the text of the Quran which require the naked eye moon sighting. But there are plenty of ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam which reach to the level of tawatur, generational continuity, which require the naked eye sighting. For instance, the ahadith, they say, the Prophet ﷺ said, Sumu li ru'yati wa aftiru li ru'yati. Start the month of Ramadan by sighting the new moon, and stop the month of Ramadan by sighting the new moon. فَإِنْ غُبِّيَ عَلَيْكُمْ فَعُدُّوا ثَلَاثِينَ. And if it is cloudy, then count 30 days. There is another narration in which the Prophet ﷺ said, Sumu li ru'yati wa aftiru li ru'yati. فَإِنْ غُمِّيَ عَلَيْكُمُ الشَّعْرِ فَعُدُّوا شَعْبَانَ ثَلَاثِينَ يَوْمًا. That start the month of Ramadan by sighting the new moon, and stop the month of Ramadan by sighting the new moon. If somehow the new moon is hindered from your sighting because of atmospheric barriers, then you count the 30 days of Shaban and then start the month of Ramadan. In reality, there are certain of the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in which the Prophet ﷺ told us to be very careful about the timing of the month of Ramadan. In one of the hadiths, he said, La tasumu qabla Ramadan. Do not start fasting immediately before the month of Ramadan. Sumu li ru'yati waftiru li ru'yati. Start the month of Ramadan by sighting the moon, and stop the month of Ramadan by sighting the moon. فَإِنْ حَالَتْ بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَهُ غِيَابًا. But if between you and the sighting of the moon comes cloud or some kind of obscurities, then فَأَكْمِلُوا الْعَدَدَ, then complete counting 30 days. In other hadiths, the Prophet ﷺ said, لَا تُقَدِّمُ الشَّهْرِ. Do not rush to start the month of Ramadan before sighting the month of Ramadan. And in one of the other hadiths, لَا تَسْتَقْبِلُ الشَّهْرَ إِسْتِقْبَالًا. So all of those hadiths, they emphasize that we must connect the month of Ramadan with the new moon. And the methodology which the Prophet ﷺ has determined to determine the new moon or the month of Ramadan is the actual moon sighting. But then the Prophet ﷺ has also given us another option. فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ. If it is cloudy, if somehow you are unable to sight the new moon because of certain weather-related obscurities, then you complete 30 days, which is called ikmal. So the fuqaha, they have said it, that يعني يثبت الشهر, or the month of Ramadan, is confirmed إما بالرؤية البصرية, either by naked eye sighting, وإما الإكمال, or by completing 30 days. But there is a third option which is also given by the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those ahadith are mostly narrated from Abdullah ibn Umar through the riwayah of Nafi, who is the Mawla ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala. And this kind of chain or chain of narrators is called a silsila al-dhahabiyya, the golden chain when it comes to the true or authentic narrations from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala, he narrates, he said, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam dhakara Ramadan. When the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam mentioned the month of Ramadan, he said, La tasumu hatta taraw al-hilal. that you should not start the fasting until you sight the moon. وَلَا تُفْتِرُوا حَتَّى تَرَوْا, and you should not or do not stop the month of Ramadan until you see the new moon. فَإِنْ غُمَّ عَلَيْكُمْ فَاقْدُرُوا, but if it is cloudy, then count or estimate. In one of the other hadiths, he narrated from Rasulullah sallam that the Prophet ﷺ said, لا تصوموا حتى تروا الهلال ولا تفطروا حتى تروا فإن غم عليكم فاقدروا له. Then if it is cloudy, then count the days of Sha'ban or estimate the timings, or you can interpret it as فاقدروا له, as calculate for it. So from the authentic hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are three means to confirm the month of Ramadan or to confirm Eid al-Fitr. Number one is ar-ru'ya al-basariya, naked eye sighting. Number two is completing 30 days of the month of Sha'ban or the month of Ramadan al-Mubarak. And number three is that if it is cloudy, then you estimate it or you can calculate. Now, this is where the problem comes. Some of our scholars, especially among some of our contemporary brothers and sisters, some of them truly believe that the lawgiver, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, has established only one authentic way of determining the month of Ramadan, which is the naked eye sighting. So what they say is that either you sight it with your own eyes, and if you are unable to sight it with your own eyes, then you complete the 30 days. There is no third choice or method established by the Prophet ﷺ. And they go by the authority of the majority of scholars, especially the classical scholars, who have explained the hadith of Rasulullah ﷺ, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ, calculate or estimate for it. They explain فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ in the light of what the Prophet ﷺ said, فَعُدُّوا ثَلَاثِينَ, that count 30 days, or فَأَكْمِلُوا الشَّهَرَ ثَلَاثِينَ, that you count the month as 30 days. So what they say is that ikmal or counting 30 days is what is Prophet ﷺ referring in his hadith of فَقْدُرُوا لَهُ, calculate or count. So counting means here not using the calculations, not using any kind of other method, but 30 days completion. So they will insist that nobody can determine the month of Ramadan except through two means. Number one, naked eye sighting. Number two, 30 days completion in case if it is obscure or if it is cloudy. Now, in the modern times, there are some contemporary scholars who have explained the hadith of Rasulullah sallam, faqduru la, count or calculate, meaning that the modern calculations can be used to determine the beginning of the month of Ramadan or the ending of the month of Ramadan. They believe that Prophet ﷺ required the naked eye sighting because at his time and during his times, the naked eye sighting was the only certain way to determine the beginning or the ending of the month of Ramadan. They also believe that the Prophet ﷺ insisted upon the naked eye sighting because during his time, and especially even before his times, in the Jewish culture or faith traditions and following them in the pre-Islamic Jahili time, there used to be some kind of calculated, intercalated calendars. And the Quran has told us about that situation. In Surah At-Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, إن عدة الشهور عند الله 12 شهرا في كتاب الله يوم خلق السماوات والأرض منها 4 حرم. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the heavens and the earth, He divided the year into 12 months. And out of those 12 months, 4 of them are sacred, Ashhurul Haram, the sacred months. Then the next ayah tells us, إِنَّمَا النَّسِيُّ زِيَادَةٌ فِي الْكُفْرِ, that basically tampering with this kind of schedule, with the lunar calendar, and intercalating by adding few days to the month or a 13-month to the year, as the pre-Islamic Jahili Arab used to do, is basically tampering with the natural order of the sequence or the circumstances which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. So therefore Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this is haram. Why it is haram? Because it has got some ulterior motives behind modifications of those calendars. All of us, we know that the Jewish community were required to follow the lunar calendar. They also used to follow the eye sighting. But when the lunar calendar was at variance with the Gregorian calendar, and they found that their holidays are not reconciling with the holidays of the Roman Empire, they started intercalating their lunar calendar by adding few days in every month and almost a 13-month every second or third year. So this way, the lunar calendar, which consisted of 354 days, was reconciled with the solar calendar, which consists of 365 days. So by means of fixing their lunar calendar, they did not have to depart from the solar calendar of Gregorian calendar, and this way their holidays also came in some fixed seasons. The pre-Islamic Arabs, they also liked this idea, and they wanted to have some of their specific holidays, especially Hajj for instance, on specific seasons. So if the Hajj is performed during the summer or during the springtime or maybe during the autumn time, these seasons are good for traveling and good for business. So people can come from Jerusalem, from Syria, from those areas which can be blocked during the winter season. So whenever Hajj came during the winter months, it decreased the business as well as the participation of the Hujjaj. So the pre-Islamic Jahili Mushrikeen, they started calculating, and those calculations were not astronomical calculation as we have got them in a precise, accurate fashion, but they were just multiplication, mathematical multiplication, adding 3 days here or 13 days here or a 13-month after 2 or 3 years, so that the Ramadan or the Hajj will always come in a specific season which is suitable for traveling, suitable for business. So this way, the month will be called Zil Hajjah, the month of Hajj. But in reality, that will be the month of either Muharramul Haram, sometimes Safar, sometimes Rajab, and sometimes different months of the year. So as all of us, we know that the Hajj is connected with sacred timings. When those sacred timings are compromised, then there is a problem with Hajj itself. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed the Prophet ﷺ to connect the sacred timing with the sacred moments and with the sacred movements of the natural celestial phenomena like the moon and the sun. Now we know that our awqat as-salah, our timings of 5 daily prayers, are connected with the movement of the sun, and our months are connected with the movement of the moon. So sighting the new moon will determine that this is the exact timing of the sacred act of ibadah. So therefore, the Prophet ﷺ insisted that instead of following the intercalated, calculated calendars, Muslims must look at the moon and start the month, and must look at the moon and stop the month. But sighting the new moon is just a wasila, is just a method of determining the sacred timing. And the wasila in itself is not obligatory or sacred, because had it been just the only way to determine the month of Ramadan, then the Prophet ﷺ would have not given us any other option. But he gave us the option of either eye-sighting or completing 30 days, or in the third option, he also told us estimate, faqdurula, estimate or calculate.